to. We might need to. So, um, Bruce, I do. That was actually one of the things I was going to say in here. You caught me by calling me at home, getting me off my game there. No problem. So I am nervous, so I am going to pray first and then just tell my story. Heavenly Father, it's been a roller coaster ride, and you have been sitting in the seat next to me, and you've been carrying me through. And I just ask that you would be here tonight and just continue carrying me through. Let my words be your words, and just let someone else be blessed by what I have to say and the amazing miracle that you have performed in my life. Thank you. Amen. So, what I was going to do was play the song Firm Foundation by Cody Carnez. But then I decided, no, we don't need to. We know the song. But that song is one that through this whole cancer journey has kept me going. My sister, when she first found out that I had cancer, she sent me that song. And in it, it says that God's got this. He's never failed me, and why is he going to fail me now? And that really is the story behind this cancer journey, which will be 2 years ago on January 3rd, coming up. It'll be 2 years since I found out that I have cancer. So, in 2023, I had noticed a lump in my left breast, but as Joe likes to say about our vehicles, yes, he compares me to vehicles, it's not new anymore. I just assumed that it was just a part of getting older and things starting to not look the same. After all, I have always gone in for my yearly physical and mammograms, and it hasn't shown any concerns. So obviously, I'm just getting a little older and run down. In December 2023, I went in for my yearly mammogram and had a lump that was biopsied. If you know my family, you know we have a lot of cancer in my family. I've always just assumed that at some point I will get cancer. I wasn't being a Debbie Downer, but I just feel like I was being a realist. Sure enough, on January 3rd, 2024, I received the phone call saying that I had breast cancer. It was quite surreal. I was at work, sitting in my car, waiting for two coworkers to join me as we were going to go shopping for some desk chairs. They knew I was waiting for the phone call, and when they saw I was on the phone, they just waited until I got off the phone and got in the van. When I received the call, I was very calm and just looked for the facts. I got off the phone and told them, let's go shopping for chairs. And so we did. When we got back, I let my office manager know that I had cancer and I was going to leave work early so that I could go to Ziegler and let Joe know. All of the guys at Ziegler knew that Joe was waiting to find out the test results as well. I calmly walked into Joe's office to see him and his coworker looking at his phone trying to decipher the results on my chart. We went into the conference room and I told him that I had breast cancer. We then proceeded to call my family. It was one of the hardest things that I have ever done. Samantha hadn't left for work yet, but Michaela wasn't home. Having to tell her I have cancer and knowing she was by herself about broke my heart. As you know, Samantha's a nurse, so she gets a lot of this stuff for me and helps me out a lot with things. When I called Larae and let her know, I asked if she and Trevor would go over to Samantha's to be with her. I didn't want her to be alone, and who better than her favorite aunt and cousin to sit by her, hug her, let her cry, and then help her to get to laugh again. Then when I called Mom and Dad, who were in Florida, I also move a lot when I'm nervous. I called Mom and Dad, who were in Florida and ready to leave on a cruise in a couple days with Greg and Sue Van Hall. They were ready to jump on a plane and come home that day. Told them that I still didn't know enough of what's going on. So go ahead and go on the cruise, because who knows what the next several months are going to look like. I knew they really didn't want to go on the cruise, but they agreed, and it was a good distraction for them until they were able to come home. The year 2024 has many blanks in my memory because of it being so overwhelming. So as I try to revisit the past almost 2 years, there are some parts that I just don't remember, but I will honestly say that this is by the grace of God that I don't remember, because everything would just become overwhelming and depressing. In Exodus 17, 8 through 16, the Amalekites came and attacked the Israelites at Rephidim. Moses said to Joshua, "Choose some of our men and go out to fight the Amalekites. Tomorrow I will stand on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hands." So Joshua fought the Amalekites as Moses had ordered, and Moses, Aaron, and Hur went to the top of the hill. As long as Moses held up his hands, the Israelites were winning. But whenever he lowered his hands, the Amalekites were winning. When Moses' hands grew tired, they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. Aaron and Hur held his hands up, one on one side, one on the other, so that his hands remained steady till sunset. When I was first diagnosed with cancer, this verse came to mind. I thought of how God sent people to Moses to help him hold the staff up. I felt like God was doing the same thing for me. Every time my arms grow weary, or I would be facing difficult situations with my cancer, God would send friends and family to hold my arms up. He never has allowed my arms to grow so weary that they fall down, and I start to lose my battle with cancer. Isn't God just like that? Whenever we are feeling weary, he sends help. 1 Corinthians 10:13, no temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man. God is faithful, and he will not let you be tempted beyond your ability. But with that temptation, he will also provide the way to escape, that you may be able to endure it. Did you hear that? It says God is faithful. He will not let me be tempted beyond what I can bear. But then he says that when I am tempted, he will provide a way out so that I can stand up under it. He did not say that he is going to send me into the fire without having someone, in my case it was friends and family, help me get through it. He also didn't say that I would never have to face challenges or temptations. Those first few days of finding out that I had breast cancer were full of miracles, or like I like to think, fingerprints of God. I knew that I was diagnosed as triple positive, which means that my cancer is a more aggressive cancer. We decided as a family that I would see if I could go into Mayo. We live in a state with the best doctors, so why wouldn't I take advantage of that? The day after being diagnosed, I went online to find out how to go about being seen there, and found a number and was immediately transferred to the breast center. They got me signed up for my appointment, starting with Dr. Stan, the breast specialist. I was surprised that I was able to immediately get an appointment. I had talked to so many people before that had said that they weren't able to get appointments with Mayo Clinic doctors because they are so sought after. I had heard stories of people just going to the ER at St. Mary's in hopes that they would get referred to a Mayo Clinic doctor. In my case, God parted the waters so that I was able to get in right away. In Mark 9:14 through 29, it talks about Jesus is healing a demon-possessed boy. In verse 22, the father is talking about how his child had been possessed since he was a boy. And he says to Jesus, if you can do anything, take pity on us and help. And Jesus replied, if you can, everything is possible for him who believes. Immediately the boy's father exclaimed, I do believe. Help me overcome my unbelief. Why am I surprised that God parted the waters for me and my ability to be seen right away? Because I am still working on being brave enough to believe him. I sometimes get caught in the mentality of why should I be considered special enough to not have bad things happen to me. God reminds me in Psalm 139:13 through 16, for you created my innermost being and knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well all days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. So if I believe that truth, then I need to quit listening to the lies and let them define me. I am fearfully and wonderfully made, and God knows my days and knows my struggles and my triumphs. Initially, I was supposed to just go to Mayo to get a couple preliminary tests done. We decided that I would go on my own since it was just running some tests and not seeing doctors. And we knew Joe was going to need all the vacation time he could get. I got to Little Falls and received a phone call from Mayo saying that there was a cancellation, and I was able to get into the see Dr. Stan the next day. I called up Joe at work and let him know. As he left work to get packed, I went home and picked him up. I also called Samantha to see if she would be able to join us. I have to pause here for a moment. As many of you know, Samantha is the nurse in our family. She has been able to come with Joe and I to just about all of my appointments at Mayo if I am seeing a doctor. The unspoken agreement is that Joe and Samantha take notes and I just listen to the doctor. The unspoken agreement is that Joe takes notes, which are good, but Samantha takes the correct notes. It has been an ongoing battle between the two of them that brings laughter to an otherwise overwhelming day. So we stayed overnight at Samantha's and left super early the next morning for Rochester. If you have never been to Mayo, you need to be sure that you have prepared your heart and mind. While it is an amazing place with amazing outcomes, it is overwhelming. We knew that we needed to plan 3 extra days of being at Mayo because they would add on different tests as they would get results in. They were not kidding. That first day I met with 3 different doctors. Day 2, I had 8 appointments. We waited for those results to come back so that the next week I would have 5 more appointments. And that is how Mayo gets things done. But like it says in Matthew 6:34, therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. And so God helped me to just deal with each day and not be worried about the craziness of tomorrow. Once I had every possible ailment, concern, or a little abnormal test rechecked through Mayo, they had a panel of doctors meet to come up with a treatment plan. The doctors consisted of a breast specialist, oncologist, radiologist, surgeon, and plastic surgeon. Once they met, they came up with my plan, and then I met with each one of them over the course of a couple days. By now, we have received all the reports back, and I have been diagnosed with invasive ductal carcinoma, triple positive breast cancer, meaning my hormones are feeding my cancer. No staging can be done until after I have surgery. While invasive ductal carcinoma accounts for about 80% of breast cancers, being triple positive is only a 10% chance, and I was the lucky winner. But Psalms 18:30 reminds us, as for God, his way is perfect. The word of the Lord is flawless. He is a shield for all those who take refuge in him. It is God who arms me with strength and makes my way perfect. And so, with that 10% chance, I decided that I would trust God and take refuge in him. So it was decided that I would have 12 weeks of chemo in Brainerd and start Herceptin, which is an infusion to treat the HER2 positive portion of the cancer. After chemo, I will take a 4 to 6 week break, then have either a lumpectomy or a bilateral mastectomy. After surgery, they will decide if I need radiation. I would also need to take a chemo pill for the next 3 to 5 years to help keep my hormones from making more cancer. So on February 14th, Joe and I celebrated Valentine's Day by me getting my first chemo. It was not our best Valentine's Day, but I wouldn't have wanted to share it with anyone else. That first appointment took 7 hours. Before every chemo appointment, I have to have labs done first to make sure that it is okay to have the chemo, meaning are my organs handling the chemo okay. After labs, I met with my Brainerd oncologist, and then I was being trained as to what to expect with chemo. One of the things that they warned us about was making sure to let them know if I felt anything strange or unusual as I was getting my chemo, since that could be a sign of allergic reaction. They warned me that things would get crazy if I had a reaction, so prepare my heart and mind. The room would be flooded with nurses, doctors, pharmacists, and the crash cart. Thankfully, everything went smoothly and no crash cart was needed yet. That first chemo was pretty tough. I had talked to a cousin who had said that when she had her chemo for breast cancer, she felt like she had the flu for several days and then was just fine and able to go back to work. She had her chemo once every 3 weeks. My stomach dropped because I was going to be having chemo every week. And like I tell people who have told me that they have had breast cancer, every woman's breast cancer is different. The type of cancer, your age, and your chemo will make your experience completely different, and mine was completely different. I remember laying in bed that day after chemo and my whole body aching. Joe was laying next to me trying to figure out what he could do to help me, but there was nothing he could do but hold me and let me cry. Mom and Dad were in the living room praying for me, and I remember thinking, how am I going to get through these next 12 weeks? But again, God did not say that our days would be easy, and this was my cross to bear, and I was going to make it through. I'm a fighter, and I planned on fighting every day as hard as I could. So now let's fast forward 2.5 weeks, and I'm getting ready to get on a ship with my family, Daryl and Tracy. It was a group of 8 of us who had planned this trip the previous June, but like I kept reminding myself and telling others, God knew that I was going to be diagnosed with cancer and that I would have had 3 weeks of chemo before going on this vacation. He knew that my hair would start falling out, which was something that was extremely hard for me to handle. And he knew that I would need a distraction from that as well. It certainly was not the vacation that I had originally planned, but it was a great vacation, and I was so glad that I was able to go on it, and glad for the family members that were with me. One of the things that I did that I will say was fun was being able to have different people come with me to my chemo appointments. The appointments usually lasted between 3 and 5 hours, and so we always made sure that we picked up a Caribou coffee before going. It's one of my weaknesses. I would take a picture and post it on my Caring Bridge, the picture stating my chemo and coffee with whomever it was. Usually it was my mom that was able to take me to my appointments, but one of my appointments, my sister Larae was able to take me. Everything was going just fine. And then all of a sudden, things seemed psychedelic, like I would imagine it would look like if I were on drugs. Then I could all of a sudden feel my heart beating very deliberately. I looked over at my sister and said, I'm going to push the button. She just answered okay, not realizing what pushing the button actually meant. The room was filled to the brim within about 30 seconds. The crash cart was sitting outside the door, and we had about 7 medical people in the room and 4 standing outside on standby. Unfortunately, I decided to have an allergic reaction to the chemo. Normally, you would have a reaction within the first 2 or 3 doses, but I don't like doing things normally. They pumped me full of steroids and Benadryl and then continued giving me my chemo. It was quite the surreal experience. I easily enough can say I don't ever want to experience that one again. I would like to say that was the end of the fun, but the next 2 nights I wasn't able to sleep at all because of the steroids and Benadryl. Most people get tired when they take Benadryl, but I now get the opposite. I remember sitting on the couch crying uncontrollably. Called Mom and said, I'm okay, I just can't stop crying. She immediately drove over and walked around the yard with me, letting me cry and handing me Kleenexes, and was just there for me. Once again, God knew that I needed a physical person to be with me, to help me through that day. I ended up having to take the first of many trips to the ER because of one issue or another. This time, they thought I was continuing to have an allergic reaction to the chemo, so they needed me to go in. That is when I learned that I am allergic to painkillers. I think they tried 5 different ones, and I kept having reactions to them. As the doctor said, I would never be a good drug addict. Throughout my 12 weeks of chemo, I experienced stomach pain, hot flashes, cold flashes, achy body, mouth sores, dry mouth, still have that. My fingernails would split and they would feel like they were going to fall off. Hair loss. But only one time, other than when I was getting the pain medication, did I throw up. That was another fear of mine. I hate throwing up like anybody likes it. But he prevented that from happening. I've asked myself many times during this cancer journey how often God shakes his head and says, once again, Larae, you've got it wrong. I am a fighter. Sometimes not always in the good sense of the word. I have been known to occasionally be obstinate, and if someone says that I can't do something, I make sure that I do. I'm the one that prefers to help others rather than allowing others to help me. After After all, Jesus said in Acts 20, "It is more blessed to give than to receive." Not that I really was trying to follow that verse, it's just my fighting way. But back to the part of God shaking his head. I had many people asking what they could do to help me. I had set up Caring Bridge so that people could read what was going on, and they knew that what they could pray for me for, but they wanted to do more. Yikes. That means I have to allow people to see that I am weak when that is not the side of me that I want them to see. However, God worked in me and reminded me that other people need to feel needed. He brought me down to a level where I had to have help, and the friends, family, and people I didn't know poured their love out on me. I was blessed beyond anything I could have imagined. First, I had people writing words of encouragement to me on my Caring Bridge site. Some people I didn't even know. They were friends of my parents or my sister. Then I had gift baskets given to me. Again, an overwhelming show of love. Then one of my coworkers asked if she could set up a meal train for me. After him and hawing for a while, I said yes. Again, the amazing meals that were brought to us. And not only did we receive these meals, but I was also able to talk with people. I was hardly working anymore, and as much as I would like to say I'm a homebody, this was too much homebody for me. Then I had a friend from school, Jamie Prax, decide to give me a benefit to raise money to pay for some of their expenses. I was shocked at how many people donated items for the silent raffle, selling the goodies, and coming and supporting me at the benefit. God truly performed the miracle of the loaves and fishes. As Joe and I so often have looked back at how little money I made this past year and how much our expenses were, we see the miracle of God. He allowed these blessings because I allowed others to help us. If I had continued in my selfish ways of being able to do everything myself, I would have never seen the miracle that God had planned for me. What a fool I almost was. One of the gifts that I received from Ben and Liz Horn was a simple package of fun colored pens. I ended up using those pens when I was in Rochester doing my devotions. I would underline verses that spoke to me, since these pens were in fun colors, now when I go through my Bible, I can easily find the verses that God wanted me to hear during that time. Pens. God can even use a pen to speak to us, and I almost missed it. Now we are in the month of June. It was decided that since the tumor was larger than a lumpectomy could be done, and because there was a lump in my right breast that was also suspicious, I would go ahead and do a double mastectomy. I felt comfortable with the decision and knew that for myself, I did not want to go through chemo again if that lump on the right side decided to become cancerous as well. Being the me that I am, I wanted this surgery to be a celebration. So we rented out a house in Rochester and filled it with family. There were 9 of us that stayed in the house. We all got up early in the morning of surgery to go to the hospital. I don't think the people at Mayo have ever had such a large group as what we did. I wouldn't want to trade my family for anything. Before going into surgery, we stood together and prayed. We prayed that God would see us through the surgery and that his will would be done. I was able to give everybody a hug before going in, and as I looked at Joe and kissed him, I was reminded that even though the next time I saw him, my body would never look the same, the love that he has for me would never lessen and only grow stronger. As they wheeled me back to the operating room, I still remember the peace that I felt. I was not worried about anything. I knew that God was in control, and whatever happened, he would see me through it. Again, he has never failed me, so why would he fail me now? As I was lying in the room, reading all the information that was on the screens and talking to the nurses in the room, my surgeon came in and was just watching everything that was going on. I had been asked, like I do every time I'm at the hospital, if I wanted a heated blanket. I have hot flashes all the time now, and I once again was having a hot flash. Dr. Black walked up next to me on the table and held my hand and started talking to me, telling me that everything was gonna be okay and it would turn out just fine, and do you want a heated blanket? I told her no, I was having a hot flash, and said her hands felt so nice and cool. So she said she would stand there and hold my hand until I fell asleep, and that's what she did. She held my hand, rubbed my arm with her cold hands until I fell asleep. Is that not God sending me someone at the perfect time to show me that he loves me and that he cares about something as small as a hot flash? I can't remember how long the surgery lasted, but it was longer than expected. They found that the tumor in my left breast had only shrunk about 40%. I thought that was good. Evidently, it's not. They also found that I had cancer in 2 of my lymph nodes and my inner mammary gland. None of the testing had shown cancer in my lymph nodes, so that was a complete surprise. The inner mammary gland is not something they can access unless they open up my chest. So since that did not shrink enough, I was going to need to have radiation. They decided my next steps would be 25 days of radiation. I would need to start a new chemo as the other one didn't work, and I would have to take a chemo pill for at least 10 years instead of the 3 to 5. I was also diagnosed as stage 3 breast cancer. Again, I was saddened by the news, but I also had peace. God still has never failed me, and He's not going to fail me now when I need Him the most. Were my prayers answered the way I wanted them to be answered? No. But God's ways are not my ways. Again, the fingerprints of God were all throughout my recovery. The shots that I was given for surgery sustained me for the next 3 days so that I was able to be up and about right away. The first day of surgery, I was able to walk the 2 blocks to Caribou Coffee. I was able to control my pain the whole time by using Tylenol and ibuprofen. Even I was shocked by it. Not to say that I didn't experience pain. Thankfully, I had Mom, Larae, and Samantha with me during those first couple weeks. Getting dressed was extremely painful. I remember one time almost passing out, but since I'm stubborn, just give me some Tylenol. After surgery, I had 22 appointments to get me ready for radiation. That also included having to start my new chemo regime, which would only be once every 3 weeks for 14 sessions. I had to have my radiation in Rochester as they wanted me to use the proton beam radiation. There are only a handful of these machines in the United States, and Mayo is one of them. The proton machine is used because they are able to control the depth easier, so it doesn't affect vital organs like my heart. I had to have a mold made for my arms and to hold my head at an angle so that every time I had radiation, it would be in the exact same location. The radiation started just above my collarbone and went just above my lower ribs, and then from my armpit to just over the center of my chest to the inner mammary gland. Radiation would last anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes, depending on if other people were waiting for the machine or not. One machine was used in 4 different rooms, so sometimes it was shared. I know it sounds confusing, and it kind of is, but it was one of the things that helped me be able to tell others about God. One of the things that I was able to do was play music while I had my radiation. Here comes the fingerprints of God again. I set up a Spotify account named Hope. Some of the songs I listened to were Firm Foundation by Cody Carnes, Goodness of God by CeCe Winez, Gratitude by Brandon Lake. Whatever song I listened to, the nurses that were assisting me were also listening to. I cannot tell you how many times the nurses and I discussed the songs that were played, the churches that we went to, and how many of them go to Eagle Brook Church, which is the same church that my sister and Samantha, now Ezra, go to down in the cities. God was able to take an awkward situation for me and be able to use it as a witness to others. I was asked many times about the smile on my face whenever I went in for my appointments, and I was able to honestly say that God is a good God, and He's got this. One of the things that I had to do was keep my arms raised above my head as I'm laying on the table. They had a strap around my feet and lights on me so that they could tell if I moved. I remember laying there in that position and listening to the gratitude song by Brandon Lake. It goes, so I throw up my hands and praise you again and again, because all that I have is a hallelujah. And I know it's not much, but I have nothing else fit for a king except for a heart singing hallelujah. I remember laying there in that submissive position, thinking, this is all I have for you, God. I know I don't have much to offer you, but I will praise you again and again. There were times when I was worried that I was going to set off the alarms because I was moving, because I was so humbled by God's love and how undeserving I am. But He died on that cross for me, and who am I to throw that gift away and say, I don't want it? So I will give Him all that I have. I would like to say that my 5 weeks in Rochester having radiation was a great vacation. I mean, how could it not be? I got to stay at Hope Lodge, which is part of the American Cancer Society, for free. Larae and I got to spend a month together going to my radiation. I had lots of visitors. Even Sue and Karen came to see me. and an overwhelming mailbox of letters from my church family. However, I did decide to take 2 ambulance rides while I was there, and I have never gotten to ride in an ambulance before, so we figured, why not? Actually, we had just spent the day with Daryl and Tracy, and that night I woke up with pain running down my left arm and my chest feeling heavy. I thought I could just walk around the room and it would go away, but it didn't. I kept having conversations with myself of what would Samantha say if I told her what was going on. She would tell me to go to the hospital immediately. I'm showing signs of a heart attack. So finally I woke up Lanae and told her that I thought I should go to the ER. Her response to me was, well, I'm not a doctor, so I guess we should go. We drove to St. Mary's and I walked into the ER, which amazingly enough was empty. I told them my symptoms and they immediately escorted me back to a room and hooked me up with a lot of stuff. Once again, the crash cart was brought into the hallway. There seems to be a pattern when Lanae and I are together. That crash cart keeps showing up. The next several minutes went from being okay to having the worst pain in my chest that I have ever felt. I thought I was having a heart attack. Joe, Mom, and Dad were called and immediately took off to Rochester. We let Daryl and Tracy know, and they came and sat in the waiting room. Once again, the fingerprints of God. They had brought their camper down to stay in while they were visiting me. Since they hadn't left for home, they were able to support Lanae until Joe was able to get there. Next several hours were full of a lot of pain until they were able to figure out what was wrong and get the pain under control. They diagnosed me with pericarditis, which is fluid around the sac of your heart. It's extremely painful, and my radiologist said, I am only the second person in the 14 years and thousands of patients that has ever had this happen to. Of course, once again, I'm the lucky one. So it was decided that I got to take an ambulance ride over to Methodist Hospital to be watched overnight. A week later, I had gone in for my radiation appointment and could tell that I just didn't feel well again. They sent me right away to have some tests done, and once again, I got to take an ambulance ride to St. Mary's because my heart was being foolish. They were able to adjust some of my medications, and I was good to go once again. Also during this time, I ended up with a skin infection in my radiation site. One would think that it would be no big deal, but it actually is. I had to go on some really strong antibiotics because they were worried the infection would go into my breast expander, and then I would need to have them removed. Then my options of reconstruction surgery would change drastically. Thankfully, it was caught early enough, and I didn't need to go have surgery yet. After those crazy 5 weeks, I was able to go home and continue chemo in Brainerd. In October, I had noticed I was starting to get what looked like another skin infection and retaining fluid on my left breast. By the beginning of November, I had finally had enough doctoring of myself through Dr. Google and decided to contact Mayo, and they had me come down and have a look at it. It was decided that my expander was indeed infected, as the one side was 3 times bigger than it was supposed to be, and I needed to have the fluid removed. They removed about 1 liter of fluid. It was then decided that I needed to have the implant removed because I was having a reaction to it. The radiation greatly increases your chances of this happening, so I knew it going into it that it was a possibility. Around this time, I started to get neuropathy in my legs. Every evening, my legs would start on fire. It didn't matter what medication I took, or cream, or essential oil, or anything. I couldn't have anyone touch my feet, not even the blankets on the bed could touch them. It was crazy and painful. So now back to the surgery. They removed my expander and put in antibiotic beads, which would take care of the infection from the inside. I had to stay in the hospital as they had to get me on very strong antibiotics that could only be given intravenously, and had infectious disease work on diagnosing what type of infection it was. I was told that my reconstruction surgery may look different now because I don't have the expander in, but that would be a discussion for later. After 5 days with no answers, I was sent home. About a month later, December 18th, I could tell that my incision was not healing and was actually opening up. I could see the antibiotic beads through the incision and had fluid leaking from the incision, and once again had to go in for surgery, but this time to have the beads removed. Once again, God supplied my needs. I was able to stay at Samantha's house so that I was closer to Mayo, and Lanae stayed with me when Samantha or Michaela had to work. I never had to be left alone, and Joe was able to go back to work knowing I was well taken care of. All this time, I am still unable to work, and I'm still getting chemo. Mom and Dad are still with me, taking me to appointments, cleaning my house, and taking care of meals. Their bodies were not happy with the winter weather, but we were actually having a mild winter, which I know was once again God's handiwork. By now, the chemo has put a damper on my everyday living. I was sleeping 12 to 15 hours a day. My liver numbers were really high, and I was feeling down. I had to keep reminding myself to count my blessings. As the song goes, count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God has done. I was seeing God's blessings every day and was thankful for them. I had family and friends bringing meals to me. I had people taking me to doctor appointments, and I was able to take time off of work. Joe and I talked many times about how God supplied our needs and multiplied our money, just like the loaves and fishes. There is no way that we should have been able to afford life except God decided to bless us and multiply our income. We had so many people that gave us money from my fundraiser, sent money in the mail, provided meals for us, and were praying for us every day. Life continues to give us ups and downs. I had a couple more visits to the ER with pericarditis and supraventricular heart. I slowly have been able to get medication sorted out to help relieve many of the side effects that I have now. I finished all of my chemo and am now cancer-free. Woohoo! I still have blood tests every 3 months to ensure that the cancer has not come back. I will have that indefinitely. I also take a chemo pill every day for the next 10 years. I will be going in on December 8th for my reconstruction surgery. Because they will be taking tissue from my stomach to rebuild my chest, I will need to be in the hospital for 3 days and then stay in Rochester for 7 more days. We are planning for everything to go smoothly with the surgery, but we also know that sometimes God's plans are not the same as our plans, and so we will be prepared for any detour that is thrown our way. So as I was writing this, I was thinking about the different people that I wanted to thank, and they're not here, but that's okay. I'm still going to say it because Dan is helping me out in recording this. So as you can see, God's fingerprints are all over this chapter of my life. It makes me so grateful for the people that he has put in my life. First, I want to thank Joe. I knew even before the diagnosis that you would stick with me for better or for worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health. Thank you for being next to me through all of this, even if I did mess up things so that we can't go on a vacation. Samantha, thank you for coming with Dad and I to all of our doctor appointments and providing us with the correct notes. You put up with so many questions and taking care of many medical things for me that no daughter should have to do. Thank you. Julia, you bring laughter when all I want to do is cry. Thank you for bringing the sunlight to my days, whether it be in the form of flowers, dinner, or just being with me. Mom and Dad, I called saying I have cancer and you're ready to be on the next plane home. You have both been here loving me and taking care of me without ever questioning if I really need the help. Mom, you flew home just because I needed a hug, and that's what parents do. Lanae, Mom and Dad may have created us, but we created our friendship. Thank you for coming up north to entertain me on the weekends, for staying with me during that insane month of radiation at Mayo, for remembering to pack 3 days worth of clothes anytime we go to Rochester so that I don't have to have an extended stay. You and I watched Mom as she took care of Auntie Nancy while she fought cancer and went to be with Jesus. We watched Dad as he took care of Uncle Bob while he fought cancer and went to be with Jesus. You stood beside me as I have fought cancer. The difference is we are going to break the tradition of cancer sending me to be with Jesus. Because as the lady at Mayo told me, don't take my pen away from me. I'm not done writing my story. Or maybe more fitting would be, don't take my pen away from me. God's not done writing my story. Fighting.